It's another week of fun times, and maybe you've been laughing about it, but the markets have been tanking again, and this time it was the DeepSeek AI. But the question is, was that the actual reason for this crash, and how am I handling my altcoin portfolio during this crash? Let's get started. It's a common chapter, and maybe I should call this channel more a bear market update media channel, as again the markets have been tanking. And if you look at the charts, then it has been a very rough and long bear market for the altcoins, especially if you're looking at the Bitcoin valuations, which continue to hit new cycle lows, or at least during this week they have been hitting another cycle low. And there is an actual reason for the fact that we're currently having this downwards momentum, which on Sunday night we had a new app called DeepSeek Air 1. During the week, Alibaba came out with a new app as well. But they came into the App Store taking the #1 position with the rumor that it was built for less than 10 million in development costs in less than 2 months by less than 200 people. Which would question the actual costs of NVIDIA or of any other application that has been funded by billions in the US. That was one of the actual topics that started to go around on Monday. The first thing we can ask ourselves is whether that is actually true. And Elon Musk has hinted that it's probably not true because they were using 50,000 H100 NVIDIA chips. And also the CEO of Skill AI, which you can see, Alexander Wang, was explaining this, and Elon Musk was commenting on this. And if you calculate the amount of cost for 50,000 of those chips, then it would equal around 2 to 3 billion in chips. So that would make sense in the fact that OpenAI is also building companies through billions of funding and chips. Now, the question is this the actual reason of the dump, or is there something else taking place that caused the markets to correct? And I think that this DeepSeek thing is something that took the spotlight, but wasn't the actual reason, as on Friday, the Bank of Japan called for another rate hike since July. Through doing that, Japan gains some sort of flexibility to do rate cuts at a later point in time when they actually need to stimulate the economy. But at this point, they raised the interest rates to the highest point since 2008. And they also said that in the next periods, for instance in July of this year, another rate hike is likely to occur. Why is this important? Well, if you remember the Japanese carry trade, the Japanese carry trade is basically the following. You borrow money in Japan for 0%, or could be doing that, and you invest that into the stock markets or in treasury bonds in the US, and you get a return of 5% or more. Basically without any risk. That's what has been happening. And every time when there's some change taking place in the Bank of Japan, this causes the markets to rebalance their portfolios, especially since the yields go up, the underlying collateral is changing as well. So all those investors need to rebalance their portfolio, and it implicates a lot of shock impacts into the markets. That what we have seen that as well in the previous time, the first rate hike, which was taking place at the 31st of July. After that, the Nasdaq has dropped massively. We also saw Bitcoin correct by more than 25% after this event took place. Not in the first day, but in the week after, because that's when the rebalancing takes place. And also during that correction, we had a market-wide liquidity crunch on the altcoins, causing Ethereum to drop by 40%. In that case, it's actually quite bullish that the markets haven't dropped any deeper and have actually been coming back up again during the week in terms of strength. And the drop was only about 10%. And on Bitcoin even less. So I think that the actual reason, or the actual case of the Bank of Japan doing another rate hike, was the fact that we have seen the markets that have been tanking. And it also caused my altcoin portfolio to drop by 20% in just a matter of days. So let's discuss what I'll be doing with my portfolio next. A short summary of my portfolio, which I do read the comments, so I see that people are actually following the portfolio and calling me a clown. But I went all in into altcoins in May of 2024. I've publicly stated which altcoins it were, and I swapped those altcoins in June 2024. And I actually caught myself being too early doing this actual strategy, in which the coins in my current portfolio are Celestia, Bitensor, Sai, Optimism, and I've got 4 smaller coins, which are Rocket Pool, Omni, Renzo, and Aevo. Again, this is my personal portfolio. We also have a venture capital portfolio, which includes Alchemy and Peak, for instance. But I'm fully allocated towards the Ethereum ecosystem, and I've been swapping some coins in between. But it's a heavy bet that I'm willing to take because I see that the markets are getting more complex, and I see that the valuations of those altcoins continue to fall, and there's some rumor taking place that the dilution of altcoins at this point is getting tremendously high, through which there is a case that altcoins are not going to run up at all anymore. But I think that that's going to change, and I think that it's the relatively last easy case of doing this strategy, where after that I probably won't be taking all those altcoin risk at all. But I want to continue sharing this publicly, and I think that the macro climate is going to change in the fact that I expect the Fed to do rate cuts in this year. The markets aren't expecting rate cuts. The markets are actually expecting rate hikes because inflation remains to be high. But that is not the only topic. The other topic is also the fact that we could be getting QE because we are having a weaker labor market or the economic growth is going to stabilize or consolidate, through which we need to get that expansion to keep the economy going. And as a reminder, in 2022, there were also no rate hikes expected, and we all know what happened after. So it's very independent of what the markets are expecting, but I think that we're going to have rate cuts throughout the year. Also because of the fact that Trump simply wants lower interest rates. So there's a very likely chance that this will happen. And if it happens based on what Trump is saying, then it's also immediately an impact in a positive manner into crypto and gold, as people are going to be more insecure about the fact that just a president can push the Fed into a position that is not independent anymore, and that's not something positive in a structural way. So what does this mean for my portfolio? I don't want to sell my positions at this point because there's at this case, there's no interest into Ethereum. There's no interest into altcoins. There's actually no interest into utility coins, and meme coins have been dropping heavily too. And the SALT increases. So I see the comments, which means that I see that there are more people heavily pissed off by the markets at this point, which I fully understand. And the final tweet is very interesting because it's my personal portfolio and I take heavy bets. And I keep on saying that if it is too much risk, it is not up to you to actually follow me. Then you should be having a portfolio on your own preference with less risk. And you shouldn't be solely relying on me because you can't see which type of trades I'm going to be taking in the future either. So the valuations of the altcoins are still at the cycle low, which means that it's not the start of a bear market. It's not the end of a bull market. It's actually close to the end of the bear market, and it's at the start of a bull market. Well, how does that end? We're going to look at the Fed and the correlations. Let's discuss my game plan. My game plan for this year is basically through 2 strategies, which sometimes I'm tweeting about this as well. I've got a day trading strategy, which is trading volatility, almost like a market maker, but I'm trading volatility, which has been going great. So I've been trading that. For instance, Optimism started at $2.70, Tau with $700, and I'm currently down around 5% on that entire portfolio, while most of them are close to 50% down. Secondly, I've got my swing trading portfolio, which is way bigger than my day trading portfolio, which I'm simply remaining patient on that portfolio because fundamentally nothing has changed. And if I take the decision to cut off my positions here while institutions are jumping into the markets, while Trump is actually stacking up ETH on a daily basis, then I'm foolish to not follow that through. And I think you should always be different than what the most of the markets are thinking, or most people or most participants are thinking. So my strategy is to hold. My strategy is to be maximum risk at this point and to build that off in the coming years while my portfolio continues to grow. And the reason for that is that I keep on watching onto these charts. And the first thing that I'm seeing here is the fact that we are having Ether, which is having a very heavy correlation into the dollar and into the yield. So that has been the case over the past few cycles. It is also the case right now. And I think that once the dollar continues to fall downwards or become weaker and the yields continue to fall, it's going to result into that return of Ethereum or the upwards momentum for Ethereum. As we can see here that in the previous period, the dollar continued to rally and Ethereum continued to fall. We just had the first bump, but Ethereum is not yet following through. And that is probably due to the reason that traders or investors are not really believing the case that the dollar continues to go or to be weaker in the upcoming period. Hence why they are not yet buying Ethereum. But there is a likely case that they will continue to do so, especially if you look at things like optimism. I just need to remove this for a second. If you look at optimism at this point, then watching the RSI shows that we might be having a massive bullish divergence taking place. And such a bullish divergence indicates that we are very, very undervalued with most of those altcoins and that we're going to swap that throughout this year, which we can also see on a coin like Wormhole, which is currently printing a potential bullish divergence, which we might be getting into in the coming period. So based on this chart or based on these charts, I just don't see any reason to start selling off my positions. And if we look at one of the coins that I have, which is Omni, then you can also see that we potentially have this bullish divergence, but you can also see that we are in a very dense or like tricky way of the markets at this point, that this can continue to fall. So I would like to see this one bounce back up throughout this week and have a green week in the next week, because then we start to have the confirmation of the bullish divergence. When we look at the US dollar valuation for this one, it's just nicely consolidating in a range. And one of the coins that is actually doing great is our dear friend Tao, which is holding up my portfolio nicely. It has seen a liquidity crunch here. As you can see, we have been dropping beneath the support of the past months, and we bounced back quickly, given the fact that Tao has some news in February coming up, and also given the fact that the AI hype is strengthening at this point. I suspect that Tao will be continuing to do well against Bitcoin. It is again back at a cycle low or at a yearly low. So I think that Tao shows that the first upwards momentum can be happening, which also indicates that for the portfolio, there's a very likely chance that in the upcoming months, I'm going to have a return on Tao, which I'm going to rotate towards some newer coins that are likely going to get into the markets. So for now, I'm sticking into my portfolio and I'm continuing to hold. Thank you very much for watching to this update. I'll be back on Sunday. We're going to discuss altcoins and Ethereum, of course. And in the upcoming period, we're going to have some interviews with some CEOs of projects. Which one should I interview? Let it know in the comments beneath, and I'll see you again on Sunday. Ciao!